Good afternoon, everyone. We are just getting started here. We're going to give everyone a couple of seconds to join our live webinar, our live conference, and then we'll get more formally started. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Again, just giving some people some time to get on here, and then I'll wait for the cue from our producer to let us know when we can begin once everyone's in. You can see the participants moving upward as we're talking, which is great. Okay, it looks like we're good to go. I think most people, I know the numbers will continue to climb within the next couple of minutes, but we'll get started because everyone likes a program that stays on time. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second annual Kitchener Rangers Hockey Club Women in Hockey Conference in celebration of International Women's Day, of course, tomorrow. We are very excited to be with you this afternoon. Appreciate you signing up. I am your host for this afternoon, Patrice Whiffen, also the in-arena host of your Kitchener Rangers. Very pumped to be joining everyone this afternoon and having the dialogue and having these conversations with these incredible women in hockey. We're going to dive into a lot of different topics and, quite frankly, probably not cover even half as much as I'd like to cover in a 2-hour period, but we're going to do our best to cover off again some of the challenges of women in sports, some of the barriers that we need to break down, some of the victories of women in hockey, and of course, for those of you who are on here to learn a little bit more about the industry and how to get into the industry, we will talk about that as well. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce my boss, our fearless leader, the COO of the Kitchener Rangers, Joe Birch.
Thanks, Patrice, and those are very kind words, and you set the bar high for me to keep this up. But first of all, welcome everyone, and we really appreciate everyone joining us for our second annual Women in Hockey Conference presented by Rogers, as Patrice had mentioned. Although we can't be in person and the world continues to change, we are so happy and excited to be able to do this. When we launched last season, our goal as an organization was to continue to grow and to make the game more inclusive and to learn from our last year's conference, which we have done. And this year we continue to do the same thing, to set out that mandate. And ideally we will be in person at some point to host this conference again. The league will and did schedule a game for us tomorrow evening for International Women's Day. To celebrate further what we are trying to do here and accomplish as an organization. We had, there are about 70 or so participants who have jumped on today. We had just an incredible response once again worldwide. We have people who have signed up from Sweden and England and California, all the way to Halifax, Nova Scotia, British Columbia, and everywhere in between there. So. For those of you who are joining us abroad, thank you for taking the time. I've been asked several times why we do this. And as an organization, there are two quite simply reasons why we're here today. One, for awareness and education. I believe as a leader in this sport, within this organization, that we have a responsibility to grow daily. It is our goal as the Rangers to lead not only within the game, within our community of the Waterloo region, but within the OHL to make the game more inclusive. As an organization, we will continue to provide opportunities, whether that's through hiring full-time employees or internships, in providing opportunities for the so many talented women who are involved in hockey on a regular basis. As the Rangers, to make sure that the awareness is out there, we will use our platforms to be allies for our guest speakers, and we will empower our guest speakers to help us all grow. I'm here to learn, as are hopefully all of you who are coming from so many different backgrounds of where you may be graduating from a sport management program to being professionals within our game, both men and women alike who have joined us here today. So awareness and education is number one. Number two, we're here to celebrate. We have a fantastic panel, and thank you to all of our guests and our panelists and Patrice's leadership that you will hear from today. We are here to celebrate you, and you are just a snapshot of the so many talented, skilled women who work within not just hockey, but in sport. And so we want to empower these amazing women and let them tell us what we need to do to get better, to grow, to learn, and to keep helping making our game the greatest game in the world. And specifically for me, I want to give a special shout out to the women who I get the chance to work with on a daily basis. Christy Oben, Megan Hutton, Olivia Terenzio, Alex Witherspoon, and our host here, Patrice Whiffen. All five of you, all five of you, are incredible. You make this environment that I work in and that we get to work in a very special place. And I thank you sincerely for all the tremendous work that you do. I thank you to everyone for all the time that you're committing here today. Enjoy the conference. I will turn it over to Patrice for her great leadership. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Really appreciate that. And thank you again to everyone tuning in today. We are going to have some fun. We're going to talk about some of the heavy questions, but again, we are here not only to learn and to grow our game and the role of women in our game, but also to celebrate the successes of women in this sport. And I think Joe did a great job in kind of setting this up for us. We are, of course, celebrating women in sports, but oftentimes we can't just do it alone. We do need our male counterparts to really support us. And I can safely say that Joe is the one spearheading these sort of initiatives on the Kitchener Rangers side. And it is so great to see and to work for an organization that has that kind of leadership because it doesn't exist everywhere. And that's what we're here to change and sort of talk about today. So again, thank you to Joe for being the person behind here. He called me the leader in this, but he definitely is the person who is spearheading this on the Kitchener Rangers side. And it is so important to not only have days like this, but integrate this into our everyday experience. And we definitely feel that here in Kitchener. So thank you so much, Joe. We're going to welcome our first panelist. We're going to get started with our first period, so to speak. Leading the way, we have three incredible women on the business side of hockey to debate some of the topics within this dialogue. So we have, as we're getting them integrated, we have Kim Davis, the Senior Executive Vice President of Social Impact Growth Initiatives and Legislative Affairs at the National Hockey League. We also have Lisa Ferkel, the Director and Head of the Canadian Sponsorship Marketing at Scotiabank. We will get to Lisa's new title if you have seen it. Spoiler alert, she will be leaving Scotiabank after many years and pursuing a new role, not in hockey, but we're going to speak to a lot of her experience in the hockey world. And then last but certainly not least, we have the Commissioner of the Premier Hockey Federation, Tyler Taminia, as well, joining us today. So thank you so much, ladies. Really appreciate your time and joining this dialogue. Thank you.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. I know everyone typically starts with bios, but we are wanting to really dive into the goods of this. We did post the bios on our website with the entry to, with the registration to our conference. So I won't spend too much time reciting the extensive bios, only because we could probably be here for the full 2 hours just going over all of the things that these women have done in their careers. But I want to dive right into kind of the first question, ladies, which is, you have all overcome challenges in your careers, whether it's because you're a woman, because you're a woman in sport, a woman in hockey, that kind of thing. And I'd like each of you to perhaps provide an example of a challenge that you overcame and maybe outline what that challenge is and how you overcame it, because I'm certain that, the challenges that you faced at some point in your career and overcome, someone else is going to be faced with the same thing. So let's maybe start with, and sorry, if someone wants to volunteer, by all means, otherwise I'll pick, I feel like a teacher in there, but Tyler.
I'll go ahead. Like,
Love
Patrice,
it. Thank you.
First of all, I want to say thank you, Patrice, for the invite, right? I would do anything for you anyway. So I really appreciate it. But let me go back almost 20 years now in the sport of baseball, because remember, I'm coming from baseball and hockey now. And I think for me, there's always challenges along life. It's never just ends. And, for me in baseball, it was kind of twofold. I was 16 years ago, I was one of the only females walking around a lot of the ballparks, and definitely in an ownership and oversight position. I felt a challenge just in my gender alone. So in order to be taken seriously or have any kind of credibility as coming in and out of the field. Because remember, I had to build rosters and then also be on the business or the boardroom side. A little bit of a challenge, just because I was a female, right? And then I also had another challenge because my father's been in the game for 40 years with the Chicago White Sox, so I was always viewed as little to Minia. So I had this challenge of I'm living in my father's great big shadow, on top of the fact that, you know, I'm here to do something in this sport as well. And how I overcame it, plain and simple, was just education, and getting better every day is always my motto. And here we are in my 40s and in hockey doing the same thing. And that never stops. So, you know, I went to Major League Baseball scout school. So on the player development side, on the scouting side, I just armed myself with as much education as possible. And I think the biggest takeaway for me was that it doesn't happen overnight, right? Like, you just can't command credibility right off the bat. It's a slow progression. It's education on both sides, my side, their side. And I think when you kind of just speak for yourself and you come with your authentic truth and your own person, eventually everybody will recognize, like, oh, okay, she's got something valuable to say or input. And so in the beginning, hands down, I did a lot of hiding. What does that mean? I made myself almost look like a boy, act like a boy. I became, I tried to hide, you know, and blend.
Right.
In order to get validated. And so that was something I learned as I matured too. I was quite young as I matured along the way, that my mind speaks for itself, my smarts, my intelligence. And, but again, you know, it takes time, but here we are.
Absolutely. That's great. And I appreciate that insight. And again, linking it, although the focus of course today is hockey, all sports have their own challenges, and seeing women overcome these challenges in whichever sport they're in is incredible. So thank you, Tyler, for starting things off. Lisa, I'm going to go to you next, if that's okay.
Absolutely. I want to start off by saying thank you as well to Patrice, yourself, and my fellow Western Mustang alumnus, Joe Birch. Thank you so much to you both and the Kitchener Rangers for having me today. I'm only in hockey for one more week. I will be going over to Golf Canada to conquer the golf industry as Golf Canada's Chief Marketing Officer. Kim, I hope to see you this weekend at Heritage. I know.
I'm just devastated.
We will raise a glass. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still your number one fan and advocate. I'm going to talk about a more recent challenge that I faced, not just as a female, but after being in hockey and being at Scotiabank for over a decade. Over 2 years ago, you know, we embarked upon some research after, you know, the pandemic hit, the horrific events of George Floyd happened. And, you know, we had built up such equity as Canada's hockey bank. And we went to research to see what we were going to do next. And it clearly told us that there existed two barriers in hockey: financial and accessible, and cultural, sorry. And we as Canada's hockey bank had a position of strength, and we're coming from an authentic position, like Tyler mentioned, to really drive some meaningful growth and change because we know the wonderful values that hockey teaches. And, you know, we started to develop a new strategy that everyone knows now as Hockey for All. And, you know, when I first started looking at, you know, we'll talk about the advertising creative, it was really uncomfortable for me. I was like, we are the optimistic, approachable bank, and we're gonna put out these, you know, these terrible stereotypes and racist comments that exist in the game we all love. And so I was really uncomfortable with that. And how I overcame that, and this is something that honestly resonates with my new career move, is that I started to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think we all do our best work when we push boundaries and really get outside of our comfort zones.
So true.
That's great. No, great feedback, and appreciate the also kind of tidbit of moving on to Golf Canada, because I'm sure there are lots of women on men and women on this call today or on this webinar today who I'm sure are interested in that industry too, and knowing that you're a resource in that as well is great to mention. Kim, over to you. Last but not least, a challenge that you've overcome in your career and what that challenge was.
Well, I could probably spend the whole afternoon talking about challenges. I think there are no successes without triumphs. And what these women, and these are my friends, both of them have showcased is, I think, a word that you'll probably hear consistently throughout our conversation, and that is being your authentic self. And being confident in knowing that even if you change industries or change jobs or change, in my case, change complete backgrounds of history, to know that your skills matter and that you are enough, right? That you simply are enough. And so I'll talk about the shift 4 years ago from 30 years in financial services to never having any background in hockey and joining the league at a very senior level and having to come up to speed, not only in learning the language of hockey, but building the credibility around that table of leaders. And how no matter how much history and success you have, every time you have to do that, it's a scary moment. And I think when senior women serve on panels, it is important that we talk about the fact that we always have to be thinking about going beyond our fear, right? That fear is like an everyday occurrence. And it happens, by the way, for men too. But I think in these spaces, it's really important for us to talk about the fear that comes with every kind of change, because we're always proving ourselves over and over and over again. And so, as Lisa said, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that's a really, really important a point. In terms of my own lived experience, what I have come to understand is that often people, organizations don't understand that when you, as a female, as a Black female in my case, sit at the intersection of race, gender, and ethnicity, in many ways, that's a triple threat that you have to overcome. And so just knowing again that you are enough, preparing yourself, having passion and purpose around what you're doing, I think helps you to overcome a lot of those obstacles.
Wow, I don't think anyone could have said it better than that, and I appreciate that, Kim. No, you are all at the very top of the game, very top of the game of hockey in your respective roles. And as women at the very top of your game, that's an incredible accomplishment to begin with. However, we haven't seen or maybe haven't seen yet a ton of women in those leadership positions. How do we remedy that gap? How do we create space for more women in those leadership positions and not just at the entry level? What sort of changes need to happen, and perhaps what sort of ways are you as leaders in your field making way for the next generation of women to also fill those roles?
Yeah, I'm happy to start that off.
Right on, Kim. Thank you.
I think as leaders in these places of power and privilege, and as women, our first responsibility is to make sure that we bring the next generation of leaders in, that we use our platforms and our power to bring women into our own organizations, not just advocate for women, but to prove that that advocacy is concrete by hiring more women. So I joined, as example, the league 4 years ago, and every opportunity that I've had to hire, I have been intentional about making sure that the slate of candidates that I look at are overpopulated with women. Because we know from research, and it's a tremendous body of research done by the University of Colorado, that shows that unless you overpopulate your candidate slates with women and people of color, you probably aren't ultimately going to make that decision when it finally comes down to the hiring decision. And so I think that's number one. Number two is influencing your peers. the best way to influence is to show the value of gender and diverse candidates by bringing in amazing talent and letting them prove themselves. And so I think that's another way that we do it, by always being that voice in the room that's willing to speak truth to that power and to talk about the need to be inclusive in the way we think about talent. The third and final thing for me is making sure that you use your voice externally to ensure that you are advocating for women and that people know that you speak for the organization in terms of the kind of change that you want to see. I think those are three important elements of changing the landscape.
Excellent. Tyler.
I mean, right there. She hit it right on the head there when it comes to, I think it's really important for women to help each other out. I think that's, I know we say that very lightly, but I think when you have each other and you're empowering other women to leadership positions, I think it's really important. I always considered it my duty to do that, right? Like from the very first start, my main mission, I've always said, is how can we get more women in leadership positions? We could talk all day long why women are in those leadership positions as much as we would like them to be. And then I also think, you know, there's a power that needs to be placed on leadership. Kim is able to get it done very quickly because she was able to walk in, regardless of being in from another, having a transition from an outside place and coming into hockey, which I would also beg to add that to my checklist. Like, that's a challenge, right? Coming from a different sport. But I bring that up because she was able to garner a lot of trust really quick. And with that trust, she's been given a lot of autonomy and flexibility to do those kind of, you know, make those kind of decisions. Same thing here. I feel like it's an obligation, and one that I'm happy to take at a high level, to empower other females to come into leadership roles. And we go back to the idea of fear. We can talk about stigmas. We can talk about fear when it comes to women in these leadership roles as well. And then I think it takes progressive leadership. And it goes back to a lot of attention should be brought onto owners of sports clubs and teams and saying, hey, like, I can't believe I'm actually saying they're progressive because they're going to empower a very smart, intelligent, you know, beautiful woman into a very high leadership position. But there's still a little bit, we've made such great strides here in hockey and in other sports as well. But there's still a little like, I'm not going to be the first one to do that kind of feeling. Is somebody else doing that? What are others doing? There's a safety in that. And I think we've definitely progressed along the way, but you've seen that progression happen when you have people in power that understand the power of diversity, that understand the power of inclusion, that understand the power that an organization is way better when you have all these beautiful people at the table, right? Making a decision on something. People that agree and don't agree, people that are not from the same cloth. So I think there's been great strides, and especially here in the NHL, and Kim is leading the charge on that, that I have seen, and it just has to continue as we go, and it goes down all the way to the hiring process as well, right? Like, I look back at all my years, and I didn't have to interview much, but when I did, like, it's okay, she's a mom. Like, is she gonna be able to, a lot of stigmas that go with that a guy doesn't get asked, right? Like, absolutely. How am I doing this call today? Like, I have kids, like, who's watching my kids? Well, my husband's actually got home from work to go watch them. He gets heralded as like, oh, he's such a great dad and a person. If I am having somebody else watch my kids, like, there's a lot of judgment and stigma on a female already. So it goes back to the original point, right? Get Kim made. We need to help, support, and grow each other. And I think there's a winning combination in the future for that.
Absolutely. Lisa, is there anything you'd like to add to that dialogue? I'm also happy to jump to another question.
Yeah, I just want to pull a little bit more on that thread of what I think both Kim and Tyler were getting at, and what's been really important in my career, and that's the role of mentors and having your champions and role models. And I think it's true of both the business side and, you know, the playing side, the sport itself. You know, we often hear that girls, when they reach, you know, those early teen years, they're dropping out of hockey, or they're dropping out of organized sport, because they can't, we hear that saying, if you can see it, you can be it. So, you know, Cassie Campbell Pascal is a very dear friend of mine, and she didn't grow up looking at female role models, but now young hockey players see her and, you know, her success on and off the ice, and they can look up to people like that. I look up to Kims of the world. I looked up to the Jackie Ryans of the world, who was my boss and dear mentor and friend for a number of years. And, you know, I now never thought that I would be playing that mentorship role, but hearing from my team and young girls that ask for, you know, those infamous coffee chats, I never say no. I say yes to every coffee chat, because I firmly believe that, similar to the females that came ahead of me, I need to play a role in giving back as well.
Absolutely. You've all kind of touched on this a little bit, as far as ensuring that, you know, upper management owners are making these decisions, and we can't ignore, you know, 50% of the population is male. So how can men support our initiatives as well? How can men support women in empowering them and giving them these opportunities? And I know you've all kind of touched on it, but maybe some final points just on, I know that, you know, our viewers right now are made up of men and women, and they, them. So as far as the role of men, how can they help support and maybe do more than what they've been doing?
I have a very simple answer for that one, Patrice. It's allyship. And that holds true of any underrepresented, you know, community or group. And, you know, I just think men, by removing stereotypes, eliminating barriers, speaking up, and just being allies, is how, you know, the other gender can help us.
Absolutely. Tyler, Kim, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, Kim. Well, we're going to reverse order now. So.
Okay.
There is a method.
Yeah. Allyship, and another word I like to use is co-conspirators, because the concept of being a co-conspirator suggests that you are working together, learning together, leading together, and not just expecting to be told what to do and then doing it, which is an important aspect of the whole series of work around allyship. But being a co-conspirator says you understand your role in doing your work, to understand what it's going to take for you to effectively use your power and your platform for change, which means that whether you have women around you in senior roles or below you, you take the responsibility for that advocacy, either because you know it's the right thing to do and you understand that, or as importantly, you understand the business imperative. Today in hockey, for example, 40% of our current fans are women. That's today. We don't even have to think about what's coming, which we know a lot is coming, because women are the fastest demographic growing across North America. But today, 40%. So as a man in a position of power, you ought to be thinking, what can I do to capture my fair share of that market? That's what a co-conspirator does. A co-conspirator thinks strategically about the opportunity. So allyship and co-conspirator.
Excellent. Tyler, anything you'd like to add?
I agree with everything.
Did a great job.
Just to conclude, I mean, that's the power of having a diverse front office, or a diverse coaching staff, or a diverse, like, you know, that also includes gender. If you look at the federation staff as well, like, men are a part of that. Men are a part of the women's league here. So, you know, I always say that I want the best person for the job, and, you know, who is going to have the deliverables and get our revenue and our business model met. And I agree with having that diversity at that table, and it's important. So.
Excellent. We do have about 10 minutes left of the panel, which I know is not nearly enough time to dive into all of the issues that I would love to. I know.
At this point.
But I do have a couple of sort of individual questions for each of you, but and we also have kind of dedicated the last 10 minutes roughly to any panel, or pardon me, any questions from our audience. So anyone in the audience that does have a question.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I thought that was me.
No.
Was it me?
No, I think Patrice froze.
Oh.
Hey there, this is the voice of Michael Zolt. I'm kind of helping run the IT in the background. And yes, it does seem like Patrice froze. So while we're waiting for her to log back in, I could finish her point that on the Q&A for any attendees who are hoping to ask questions of the panel, there's a Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And while Patrice is frozen, if anyone tosses some in, I'd be happy to toss them out for our panelists.
Oh.
Patrice.
Yeah, I have no idea what happened. Sorry, everyone. I'm at the office. I'm not sure if maybe the internet just cut out or something. My
No problem,
there.
Patrice. I finished your point about the Q&A, but
Okay,
good timing.
perfect. Thank you. Yeah, very bizarre. Everything just like shut down on my computer. So good times.
Okay.
Technology, gotta love it. My apologies, everyone. Okay, so the question that was submitted probably the most was, what advice do you have for an aspiring woman in this industry, a woman who wants to get into this industry, or parlay, maybe a junior position into something higher up? And I know that's a very broad question to ask, but it's something that a lot of people have asked. So I'm going to throw it out there. And if you have maybe some key points you'd like to outline, that would be great. And I just looked in the chat box, and that question was just put in the chat box. So we'll maybe start with Lisa on this one.
That's always a good question to end on too. A few years ago at the bank, we introduced, a saying, and it was to be essential. No matter what department you were in, you wanted to be essential to our customers, to the organization, to your team. And that really resonated with me because I've been living and breathing that my entire career. I like to think of myself, especially early on when, competition is fierce to get into sports and a lot of industries, males, females, it doesn't matter. There's that competition there. And so how was I going to differentiate myself? And I really just worked at making myself indispensable. And no task was too big or too small. And I made sure I just got it done. And that I was always a sponge, always wanting to learn and absorb as much as I could. And I think that's so incredibly important, is to continue learning and to be essential.
Love that. I'm happy to also ask another question. We have a bunch in the Q&A now, and maybe someone wants to volunteer to answer. There's a young man, I believe, who has asked, going into the diversity, equality, and inclusion space, how can they teach themselves to be a better ally? Whether it's a man or a woman asking that, I think that's a great question. So how can they teach themselves how to be a better ally?
Yeah, I'm happy to take the first shot at that. I think the first thing is to, as with anything, the best teacher is for you to seek out information. If you were, starting a career in technology, you would go and soak up every bit of information that you could learn about the technology field. And so if you're trying to learn more about diversity, equity, and inclusion and change management and culture change in organizations, there's a wealth of information out there that you can read and begin to understand what issues are, how different communities, the history of those communities, and the impediments that exist in our society. And to not just look at things through the lens of the experiences that we've all had growing up, but to challenge ourselves to think and learn beyond that. I think that's number one. Number two is that understand that in our organizations, for us to really grow and win in the marketplace, we have to think about diversity, equity, inclusion as embedded in the DNA of how we operate. This is not a six finger. This is this is part of our hand, right? We have to integrate this into the way we think about sponsorships, the way we think about selling, the way we think about marketing, the way we think about finance. We have to look at it through that lens. And so it's really important for us to understand that this is not about a social movement exclusively. This is about how we prepare ourselves to embrace audiences, new audiences, and that we do it in an authentic and trust-based way where we can grow our businesses.
Love that. I'm going to ask another question, if that's okay, just so we can get a couple of these done if someone else wants to take this. This is actually directed at Tyler. Tyler, you mentioned you're a parent. I'm coming back from maternity leave and finding myself taking on more in order to make up for the flexibility of managing my family and work. What advice do you have for working moms in sports?
Oh, you just hit a nerve with me, right? Like, I think us as women, we have to overprove all the time, right? So like you were going to start, you're doing exactly what I did. It's like you're overproving, I would just say, look, like you just did something that is a miracle and is unlike anything else you'll ever do in your life. And I keep going back to, I was there. I was on my first kid waddling around. I'll never forget. I was 8 months pregnant out in California trying to get a left-handed pitcher to pitch for my team in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And, it was scary for me because I was just like, this is a huge sign that I am, I'm a mom, and oh my gosh, this is the end of my sports career. I think what I could try to tell you, and I try to actually have to tell myself this every day, so this is never going to be like a solution for you, is be aware of who you are, validate yourself. Don't let anybody else validate you. You are already winning in life. It is so hard to be a mom and have a job and be whatever on top of that. So I just would like to say, I can't see you, but don't use that as a, oh my gosh, it's a source of anxiety because I need to overperform at my job now, right? Like, just be comfortable in your own self, that you're smart, you're intelligent, you have a job, you can do it all. You're just a Renaissance person, right? We can do it all. Let's be honest. And then surround yourself with people that try to bring you back down when you have that anxiety or you have that guilt or you can, or those nerves. Just surround yourself with people that will be able to put you in a place of calm and sanity. But don't put that extra pressure on yourself. Easier said than done. I still do it to this day. You're never going to be good enough. I'm never going to be the best mom. I'm never going to be the best commissioner. I'm never going to be the best wife. I'm never going to be the best sister. I'm never going to be the best daughter. You're not going to please everyone. So just remember and remind yourself that you're killing it. And that's the best piece of advice I look in the mirror sometimes and I just have to say, I'm killing it.
Yeah, you are.
If I don't say that, I will be in the fetal position after this call. Like, so you just have to, like, it's not cockiness. It's not anything. It's mind over matter. It's making sure, I'm sorry, you can tell this is a hot button for me, whoever asked this question. Just be you, and you're doing great. And that's all I have to say.
And give yourself a break, right, Tyler? Give yourself a break. Let yourself make a mistake. We're all such type A perfectionist women, and it's okay to make mistakes. Like, it took me a long time to learn that, and I'm not even a mom. Yes.
Easy.
Not only is it okay to make a mistake, but actually we want to make mistakes because some of our greatest learning comes from making mistakes.
Sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. I actually have that on a t-shirt. It's a very, very important message.
We should get that for everyone attending this conference, that on a t-shirt. I think that's a great words of wisdom. I know we're getting short on time, but I did want to ask one more question from our audience. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. I'm going to direct this one toward Lisa. You said, if you can see it, you can be it. One of our attendees has asked, what would you say to women who are considering dropping out of sports, whether that's the playing side or the industry side, because it's too tough or hard to compete or whatever the challenge may be? What would you say to that woman or girl considering getting out of it?
Oh, man.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I
Anyone
would
else
say
can weigh in too.
persevere. persevere. I learned this from, I've sat down with Kim. I've been fortunate enough to sit down with Kim many a times. And what we talk a lot about is resilience, right, Kim? And perseverance and resilience, because I started my career as a junior coordinator and just persevered through every hardship, through every obstacle. And I think if we just, remember like our passion and what we really want and set goals, and like we've talked about today, surround yourself with other women who are facing the same adversity you are, and, or male allies. I really just want to give you a pep talk and coach you and tell you to not give up. And
can I just add to that too, Lisa? I would say exactly what she just said, but also, sometimes in life, it's okay to take a step backwards in order to go forward. And I've done that twice now in my career. But also burnout is high in sports, right? Because it's 24/7. And I was in financial services and high tech, and there's a burnout right there too. It's just the way of the landscape at this point. But sometimes it's okay to say, this is too much. I'm going to pause this for a minute. I did that 16 years in baseball. It's like, all right, guys, like I got to pause, right? When your energy and your passion needs a little bit of a restart.
Right.
Get uncomfortable with feeling uncomfortable, Lisa, right? Like that's uncomfortable because now you're just like, oh God, I built this career. Like, do I pause it for a minute and go do something else? But it re-energizes us, right? And, I always say it's always okay to come back to sport. People know you, right? Like it's always harder to get in, I feel like. But when you're there and then you pause it and you want to come back, or you take a redirection in life, it's okay. Like, again, going back to what Kim said, stop, we don't have to put this pressure. We got enough pressure in society. But, sometimes I've learned that if I took a step back, I ended up moving ahead faster than if I stayed.
That's perfect. I kind of want to squeeze in one more question, although we only have 2 minutes. This one's directed just toward Kim. Kim, how can individuals working at lower levels or community hockey, such as an OHL team, although Burton, I would like to argue that I wouldn't say it's necessarily just community hockey, but how would, and he's from Peterborough, so all of the love, Burton. I didn't mean that as a chirp, but how can lower level community hockey teams co-conspire with the NHL as a league and execs like yourself to help grow the game? So how can people at a lower level than the NHL make a difference and help grow the game?
Yeah, this is a really, really important point, and it's one that I talk a lot about on my social channels, this notion of this work being about a journey and not an event, and this is a movement, not a moment. And the reason I talk about this being a movement is because it takes every part of the hockey ecosystem for us to change the sport of hockey. What I've come to learn about hockey is that we can be doing all the right things at the NHL level, but if that isn't translating down to every part of the ecosystem, it impacts our brand for the positive, or in some cases for the negative. And so don't think about the work that you're doing at the community hockey level as being isolated from the bigger picture. And that's why we spend so much time with all of the youth hockey organizations and the minor hockey organizations, because we understand that the brand of our sport is dependent on every part of the ecosystem operating in tandem. And so continue to do the work, reach out and let people know what you're doing. That's part of being a co-conspirator. And to make sure you use your voice and your influence, regardless of what your level is. Leadership happens at every level. And if you think about yourself that way and you think about your career that way, I believe that's how you make progress in navigating your career.
Perfect. I think that's a great way to end. Thank you so much. Sorry, does someone want to speak something in?
It's so good. Love it.
I appreciate all of your time. Really, really do. I honestly feel like I could speak to each of you for 2 hours, just one-on-one, and have tons to cover. But we do want to stick to the schedule. Appreciate your time so much. Thank you again. I know I speak on behalf of the Kitchener Rangers Hockey Club, but also everyone that is logged in today. When I send all of the thank yous out to Tyler, Kim, and Lisa for joining us this afternoon for our Women in Hockey Conference. Our first panel is now officially done. You ladies are, of course, welcome to stick around or get back to killing it in your respective industries. Look forward to staying in touch with all of you. And again, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for participating in this.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We are going to take a very quick break before we get started. I know we are 1 minute behind schedule, but I want to give everyone a chance to run to the washroom, grab a drink, that kind of thing. We will be back. I'm going to try and say like 2 minutes, but give everyone just a quick chance to even just stretch their legs, and then we will get started with our second period, which is barrier breakers. We have another 3 incredible women to join us for that. So we are going to take a quick break and then be right back. All right, sit tight, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. That's the poo.
I muted.
Hey everyone, this is Michael Zolt running things in the background. Just while we get the audio reconnected, we'll start promoting our next group of panelists in 1 second and get things going after the break.
What if I just use the speakers? That better?
They're good.
Okay, maybe I won't use my AirPods then. Weird that they weren't working. Okay. Well, welcome back. We're going to get started with our next panel, which again is barrier breakers. We have, oh, hold on. I guess I can wait till, there we go. Okay, everyone's coming in now. Awesome. For those of you who are just tuning in for our second panel, welcome to the second annual Kitchener Rangers Hockey Club Women in Hockey Conference presented by Rogers. I did want to make a quick mention of the fact that Rogers is proud to support the Women's Crisis Center podcast. For more details, you can head to wcswr.org. The podcast is called She Is Your Neighbor, and they're proud to support that and wanted me to include that if anyone is interested in checking that out. Without further ado, we will get started into our second period, so to speak. We thought we were funny making these kind of replicate a hockey game. Why not? So our second period is barrier breakers. We have Aisha Vishram, Kirsten Welsh, and Kiana Scott, who are just joining us here. Thank you so much, ladies, for being a part of this dialogue. I know some people have been putting mentions or notes in the chat box. I am trying to stay on top of it, but there's the Q&A section and the chat box, and then of course my lovely panelists. So I'm trying to stay on top of everything, but if I've missed something, my apologies, but feel free to, again, dump any questions that you have for these panelists in the Q&A section, and I'm happy to save the last 10 minutes for that as well. All right, without further ado, let's begin. Again, ladies, thank you so much for being a part of this day. You are all at the top of your career in your field, and this panel is focusing on not only breaking barriers, but you're breaking barriers not on the business side, but on the team side, the athlete side, the sports side that historically has been harder to break into as a woman. So again, I'm thrilled to be speaking to each of you and want to not only thank you for participating, but also congratulate you for what you've accomplished so far in your careers. And you're all very young, so this is only the beginning for each of you. But thank you so much for participating in this day. And we will kind of dive right in. The first question again is kind of broad, but I figure it's a good place to start. And that is, what does it mean in your world to be a woman in sport? And anyone can jump in, or I can assign.
I guess I'll start
Yeah.
first. I mean, it means the world to me to be a woman in sports. It's a growing community now, and I feel very proud to be a woman in sports and in the role of scouting.
Excellent. Yeah, Kirsten, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's a crazy movement we're a part of right now, and just giving the opportunities, I've personally gotten within the last couple of years. It's been a lot of the big strides in the right direction. Just kind of like getting the conversation going, the community being accepting of that, and it's 2022, so it's been a topic of conversation, and now it's kind of just like catching up with women in these positions, and it's just been super incredible to see the community and how welcoming they've been for me, at least.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think it's such a great time to be a woman in sports because there's so many of us that are visible now, not just management, reffing, scouting, media. It's great to see. I'm just happy to be a part of it. It's great to see so many more of us here. It's very inspiring and empowering. And I think actually Kirsten and I are working a game together tonight. So that's even.
Oh, no way. That's
are you
amazing.
working the Ontario Rain game tonight? Yeah. So,
Yes. Oh my God.
yeah. So even cooler.
That's wild. I love that. That's fantastic. And sorry, I realized I didn't say your titles when we started the way that I did for the first panel. So I will quickly go over titles. Kirsten Welsh is a Canadian ice hockey official, but also doing work within the American Hockey League. Aisha is with the Ontario Reign and the LA Kings as an athletic trainer. And Kiana Scott is with the Erie Otters as a scout. So we're covering off a lot of team side of the spectrum. And again, these women have a wealth of knowledge. I want to start with, or I guess move into the next question, which is the challenges that you have faced. And I know on the business side, there are challenges that women face in the work world, but I do feel as though the challenges that are faced on more of the team side are arguably potentially hard. It's harder to get in that side because you're working more directly with athletes and within the, male dominated sport side of things. What sort of challenges have you yourselves overcome in that way, and what have you done to overcome them? And maybe we'll start with Kirsten. It looks like you're ready.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of working like on the ice, like up front with like coaches and players. It's kind of like when I first had my debut game in the OHL, like a lot of the guys just kind of like didn't really know how to act, and like obviously it's a first for many. So it's just kind of cool though. I mean, there was no like, it wasn't anything like a respect factor. It was just like not really knowing how to deal with it, because like there's a different like just between like two genders. It was funny, like one of my first experiences, I came back from North Carolina from a beach, and I had like bright pink nails on, and it was like one of the prospect tournaments for Buffalo, and like these are like NHL prospect guys, and they've never been officiated by a female before at that level. So when I came in there and I put my hand on their jersey and they saw the pink nails, they were just like, what? Like, I don't know how to act. It's hilarious. But I just think it's like getting that experience, just be out there and having it more of a conversation and more, like common, just to have somebody on the ice who's a female. And it's like, I don't know, there is an instance too where like, and like, you got to take this with a grain of salt. Like being a referee, you get screamed at all the time. It's not just because I'm but like there's been instances where like guys have been like, yelling at me to get out of the way or whatever. And like, I mean, as a first official, you kind of got to like take it here and there, but like I have my threshold, and like when I yell back, like they don't, like if I respond, like they don't know how to respond back, but it's just like you just have to be politically correct. It's like you can say what you want. Like I have a pretty thick, like you have to have thick skin to get to be in this role, but it's like I'm pretty lenient, but it's like it's just kind of like curbing. That's the part where we have to educate. It's like like saying certain things and like certain words just like isn't acceptable in this day and age. And like again, like what I said before, it's been a topic of conversation, and like now that we're actually seeing women in these roles and like on the front lines, it's just important to keep that keep educating and keep getting them used to it. And this is going to be a norm in the next like 5 years. Like it's going to be like more people after me, and like that's the whole reason why we're doing this, right? Like it's the biggest reason why I'm doing it is because way bigger than myself. It's like I hope to see way more women in this and in the same position moving forward. So
Kiana, do you have anything you want to add to the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I think I've challenged or had a couple of challenges. I mean, I grew up playing hockey and I played guys hockey when I was younger. And some of the challenges that I had was, I had to change in a separate room. So I was kind of segregated from my team. I didn't have that same kind of bond with my team. And the different changing rooms that I had to change in, I mean, they were either refs rooms or I was changing in, the general washroom at the rink. So how I overcame those was my coach would call the rink in advance to get me a proper changing room. And I would bond with my team afterwards at different events. But, what Kirsten kind of said was when I became a scout, like I don't really look like a scout. And I think that some people were kind of surprised by my appearance, and I don't really just fit in. Like I wear high heels and I dress like this. I dress very nice. So when they see me, they don't really see me as a typical scout. So that's something that they had to kind of get used to, I guess. So I could relate a lot to what you said.
Aisha, what about you?
Yeah, I think a lot of, I feel similar things to what Kirsten and Kiana said, but for me, I think early in my career, there was a lot of feeling like my experiences and my achievements weren't really weighted the same as men or weren't really evaluated in the same way. And seeing people with less experience, less qualifications get positions or promotions over me was very frustrating, because then what do you boil that down to? Well, my gender. I think overcoming that, you just can't give up. As frustrating as it can be, you just need to keep going. Find people who find value in you and who believe in you and who would speak for me and stand up for me. That's what really helped move me forward, is continuing to show up every day and show that, hey, I can do this, and getting people to notice that and getting people to, talk about that and saying that, yeah, it really doesn't matter. She does the job just like anybody else, and that's all that matters to us. And I mean, I'm proud now to be in a place where, with an organization that values me just for my qualifications. And I think at the same time, you never want to work in a place where you're not valued for you. So it's good that I didn't get those positions, because that wouldn't have been the right fit either. So I think, yeah, you just can't give up. You just need to keep trying.
Well put. Now, the three of you have all broken barriers in your respective fields and conquered, your respective fields and your roles, but there are still lots of barriers to be broken. Perhaps you can each provide an example of something that you see that needs to change, and perhaps suggest how we can make that change, or what needs to happen for that change to occur.
I'll start again if that's cool.
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, I just think the barrier of just the pay gap, and how much marketing we're doing for women, and how much promotion and branding there is. I mean, again, it's getting better, and we have steps in the right direction, but it has to be a topic of conversation. Just the marketing portion of, having nationwide deals with TV providers, and getting, just getting it all of the, say, Under Armour, Nike, all of these huge brands, having women, at the front line of that. I mean, look at Cami Granato, she just was the assistant GM for the Vancouver Canucks. That was just a role this year, and seeing that again, seeing is believing is huge. So having women finally get what they deserved, and Aisha, same with you, when you see people getting more respect than you, and less who have less credibility or less experience, it's just really frustrating. So it's definitely a game of catch up, I think, at this point. And I think we're starting to shift that thought process of, maybe we should give everyone an equal opportunity, and maybe we should, pay a little more attention to women and their sports. Even looking at the Olympics this year for both men and women, or the women's Olympic teams, their gold medal game had record breaking viewership. So it's it's there. It just has to have the opportunity to be, watched. And I mean, specifically women in hockey, I think the next big step is creating one league that all these players can be a part of, that, people have somewhere to go to watch them, because that's part of it. It's just finding where, how to watch that, on what, what platform, do I have to pay, get
more accessible.
Exactly, more accessible.
Yeah.
So I think that's just the barrier that I think that we need to break, is just the marketing, the branding, and the sponsors with women.
Kiana or Aisha, who wants to go next?
I'll go next. I think a big barrier that needs to be broken is the old stereotypical mindset of how people view different roles in sports. It kind of prohibits women from being seen in those specific positions. And a lot of people still have that old kind of mindset, picturing who fits these positions and what they look like, which is a constant barrier that even I face. For example, I was at the rink scouting, and I would say a lady in her 50s tapped me on the shoulder and asked, what I was doing. And I said, I scout for the Erie Otters. And she's like, oh, okay. And then 5 minutes later, she asks, so do you just take notes and then you give it to your notes to a real scout, and, they come back and evaluate? And I said, no, I'm here evaluating the players right now. I'm the scout. And
I am the real scout. Yeah.
Yeah. It goes from that to yesterday. I was at a game, and a younger team, probably 8 or 9 year old boys, was sitting in front of me at a game I was scouting. And a younger boy came up to me and asked, "Do you work for the Erie Otters?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Are you a scout?" And I said, "Yes." And he was so ecstatic, and he went to his friends and said, "She's a scout. We have to tell her to scout our game." It just made me feel just like a normal scout, and having that younger generation come in with that mindset is how we'll change and break barriers with that old mindset of what typically a scout looks like, or in a different role, even like yours, being a ref, Kirsten. Like, I'm sure you have had those comments as well. So
Absolutely.
Aisha, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think that Kim Davis kind of alluded to this earlier, that, and it's been discussed by both of you already, that we need to allow women to be themselves. Like, there is no, certain way that you have to look or act. Be yourself and appreciate what they bring to the table. I think that's still a barrier that we deal with. And again, another thing that they talked about on the other panel was, in order for us to achieve gender equity, everyone needs to be a part of it. And I still think that's a barrier now, is that we need men to be a part of this as well, and to say, hey, yep, we want them here. They can do the job. This isn't you don't pick the man over the woman just because he's a man. We need people to start doing more of that as well. That's really the way I think that we'll get to an equal playing field.
Now, what advice can you three offer kind of the next generation? I know a lot of people on this webinar or in this conference are looking to, have careers similar to those that you have had thus far. And of course, watch your careers continue to grow and evolve. What advice would you offer that next generation, or someone coming into the industry right out of school, or looking to transition into the industry? What advice would you give?
Go
ahead, Kirsten. Yeah.
Sorry. I don't know. I just think, like, if you're like, you should not, I don't know. Sorry. I just say, like, don't be afraid to, like, take risks. And if you're gonna do something, do it 100%. Like, I don't know, like, I just never have settled being mediocre. And I think, having that work ethic, and like in my eyes, like, when people give somebody an opportunity, like, obviously, like, as women, I don't know if applies to you guys too, but like, a lot of women who are in, like, the first role, like first ever, like, woman role in that position, feel like they have to, like, really overcompensate and, like, really, like, work hard and, like, show people that, like, we deserve to be here. But it's like, again, Aisha, what you're saying, it's like, don't be afraid to just, like, be yourself. Like, you're allowed to make mistakes. It's like, if you just try hard and, like, are willing to learn and, like, do things, like, just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean you can't do it. Like, just, like, create your own lane and, like, work hard, and, like, there will be opportunities you'll see that'll, like, open up for you. And, like, if you're like a good candidate, if they see that in you, like, there's opportunity to, like, mold this young woman into something that, a hard worker. Like, it's like general traits of what you need to do to be successful. And I mean, you'll see, if you apply yourself and you don't be afraid to take risk and jump in with 2 feet, like, things will open up, doors will open up. And I think, again, being the social movement, a part of that we are today, it's just like, look after yourself and, like, keep your head down and keep grinding. That's my advice.
Love that. Aisha, Kiana, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I'd have to probably agree with everything Kirsten said. It would be more, I feel like everyone has their own path through hockey. So I can't really touch on someone else's story, but the advice I would give was more like internal advice, being in a male dominated industry. I know for myself at 17, I had to make that decision on whether or not I was going to be able to have a career in a male dominant industry and have that tough skin, like Kirsten talked about before. You're going to come up against certain situations that your male counterparts probably will never have to deal with and come up with solutions for. So you have to stay confident and, keep your head up through everything. One thing for me is that, no dream is impossible. And I had to believe in myself in order to get to where I am today. And never prove someone wrong, just focus on proving yourself right in every situation.
I like that. Interesting. Aisha, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think that like look at every opportunity as a chance to learn. Control the things that you can control, because there's a lot of stuff that we still can't control. And if you don't let the challenges get you down, learn as much as you can, work on your skills so that when the opportunity does arise, you're ready for it. I think that's a lot of the stuff that we can do is and stuff that we can control is that. I think I certainly feel this every day, the pressure to be perfect, knowing that if I can't do something or if I don't know something, it's not, oh, the athletic trainer doesn't know it. It's, no, she doesn't know it. And I know that that's not, my players don't think that way at all, but I think that way. And that's something that I've dealt with my whole career. And I hope that the next generation doesn't have to, because that is just overwhelming and also silly. We shouldn't have to be perfect. You need to be yourself, and everyone's going to make mistakes and you want to learn from them. But that still fear of like, well, if I can't do it, they're not going to hire anyone else because I couldn't do it is still there.
Absolutely. We are approaching the kind of almost last 10-minute window. So I did want to just open the floor to questions from our audience. If there are any, I've got lots again that I know we will not have time to get to everything, but did want to open the floor. So again, feel free to throw a question into the Q&A box if you have anything. I know a couple of questions have already come in, which is great. I guess I'll start with one of the questions in here just to hopefully get to all of them. This question is for Kiana, with respect to the comment about the old mindset and having that hit home. I've been a part of the media in the OHL for the last 5 years. To this day, when I walk into a media or scout room, there's no question that it is a boys' club. In fact, when I walk in, I'm often asked if I'm lost. Every room I've been in so far, I've been the only female in the room. How do I not let that get to me and impact my mindset?
I think that you just have to have the confidence. Whether you feel it or not, going into a room full of men, you have to have confidence. I always walk in with confidence in any kind of situation. I know a friend of mine that's a girl in the industry. She was asking me kind of how I network, and I have so many male allies on my social media or in person. I get a lot of people coming up to me. You just have to dive into the industry in a sense where I find in the media room or scouts or GMs, you have to kind of get to know them. So approach them and just say, hey, how's it going? Introduce yourself and they'll probably warm up to you. It's a different kind of world to navigate on that kind of side. And my advice would just be walk in with confidence and just be friendly with anyone and kind of take it from there. People in hockey are genuinely pretty nice. I've always been confident in myself and made friends and allies that way.
Excellent. Kirsten, I'm going to ask a question of you. Growing up, what women did you look up to? Did anyone inspire your career as far as getting into officiating? Oh, I can't hear you. You might be muted. That's okay. There we go.
So I kind of had like a hockey, upbringing. Like I was like player, and then I kind of switched to officiating. So as a young hockey player, looking up, I actually funny, I know it was mentioned earlier, but Cassie Campbell, seeing her on the Olympic team, and Vicky Sonohara, she was like a local where I grew up. I actually went to like one of her hockey camps as a kid. And even like Christine Sinclair, like she's been the captain of the soccer team, women's Olympic soccer team for years. And like just seeing those women and how hard they worked and how successful they were, like really drove me to like want to be that, like want to succeed in a sport. And like, again, with women, like it's the opportunities aren't so prevalent because, it's just been not as common to see women in those positions. So having those people is kind of like, people I look up to, it has really helped. But for officiating, I mean, there's this one individual, her name's Kendall Hanley, and she's kind of like helped navigate. She's one of the other officials that work in the AHL as a linesman person. But she's kind of been around for like years, and she's done, she just got back from Beijing Olympics, and she's done there's a lot of games, and she's done a lot of mentoring for like the officiating side of the game. So to see her, and like I just try and kind of like take after her and always kind of want to give back, because that's the whole point of it, right? It's like you this game has given so much to me that like all I want to do for like the future is generations of little girls is just give back and give more opportunity and get this conversation going. Like things like this, you know, this panel that we're doing today, like it's huge. Like this would not have been a thing 10 years ago. So I mean, even being on here with, you know, these two women is incredible, and it's like to be grouped in with them is really a humbling opportunity. So I just feel really lucky in the position that I'm in, and just being able to talk about it and have these conversations to make it known that this is, you know, going to be the norm within the next like couple of years here is truly really exciting. So.
Excellent. Aisha, I'm going to skip over to you now with the next question. It's safe to say there are not a lot of women in leadership positions within the athletic training side of things. You are definitely, you know, one of the leaders in that field, and sort of paving the way for the next generation. What advice would you give someone specifically in the athletic training side of things, as far as how do they get experience? How do they get that opportunity, that foot in the door?
I think that's a really great question, because a lot of recent research is showing that women who get to higher level positions have good leadership skills. Some people may be natural leaders, but those are also things that can be taught. You can be taught how to be a leader. You can be taught managerial skills. And I think that definitely, again, according to the research, is going to make a difference. So I would suggest finding mentors who can help you with those things. Men and women, whoever's able to best help you prepare for your career, get advice from them, work on your leadership skills, or ask for training from your organization. If you're a student, ask for that in your program. If you're, you know, a young professional, ask your organization, tell them you want to be a leader. I think being honest about your goals, people can't give you what you want if you don't say what you want. If you want to be a head athletic trainer, tell them. Let them help you work on your leadership skills. Let them put you in positions to, you know, go to committee meetings or something so that you can learn how to be a leader and in that position. I think if you tell people, you'll find people who will want to help you. And for any young professional, like, just work on your skills. It's never a bad thing to be overqualified. It can be frustrating, but it's never a bad thing. So just keep learning as much as you can, and your chances will come.
Excellent. I have another question for Kiana. How do you get yourself out there as a scout? This actually comes from one of the audience members who says, I've been taking notes and making reports for about 4 years, but I really don't know how to utilize it to advance my career, especially while I'm still in school. What advice would you offer?
For that, I mean, to get yourself out there for scouting, I just started showing up to the rinks. I first started out doing training camps in the summer and just taking notes for myself and practicing. I ended up going into the International Scouting Service mentorship program, which gave me access to RinkNet, which is how we navigate all of our games. So when I had that, I went out to the rinks all the time. And one thing I can tell you is it's not who you know, it's who knows you. That's how I was kind of founded by Erie. I just kept showing up to the rinks, and I was hard not to notice. They saw me working hard. They saw me being disciplined, going to all the games, no matter what the weather was like. So if you get out there and just start showing up, people will start noticing you. If you're in school, I would suggest doing an internship with a team or volunteer work. I worked 7 years for free volunteering with teams to get to where I am right now. So that's another kind of path that you can do, is just volunteer your time and learn that way.
And I think that's a reality for men and women getting into the industry in general. I think there is an element of sort of paying your dues and getting those opportunities. And sometimes it is, you know, as much as people like to debate this, like sometimes it is working for free. And I've done lots of things for free in my career, as I'm sure each of you have, to advance to, you know, that next level. And so I think that's some great advice, whether you're a man or a woman, to, again, put yourself out there. I want to ask kind of a general question, and anyone who is on the panel is welcome to speak to it. But we've talked about things that need to change in the game, things that need to happen to make these roles more accessible. You and your specific roles, is there anything that you are doing or you think you can do in your individual respective roles that can help make those small changes, that if we make all these small changes come together to make a big change, maybe is there something that you're doing or something that can be done at your level to just create that accessibility for more women?
Yeah, just like somebody in my position, I think it's important to like build up other women and, you know, talk about it with like the players and the coaches and like just like establish that conversation that, you know, you are willing to communicate and like talk and like kind of going off what Aisha said, but just like actually, you know, voicing the things that you want to do, like speaking it into existence. Cause like, I think, you know, women have just kind of been not known to being like quiet, but it's like, it's kind of, it's intimidating, like being the only one there. So it's like, you gotta like speak up for yourself and like talk about it. And I think that's the best thing we can do for women is just, you know, create the normalcy around it, that this is happening. This is like what's going to be happening for the next. So it's like, if you have any questions or concerns, like ask me, because like I'm saying, like when you're talking to coaches and players and stuff, because like you want to get it out of the way, like Aisha said, for like the next generation, so they don't have to deal with it.
Absolutely. Aisha, Kiana, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think that in my role as well, like Kirsten said, my doors are always open to young females trying to break into the industry. One recently contacted me. Her name's Joelle Stockley. She's a 17-year-old girl that is in university right now, or actually she's going into university. She's a hockey player, and she said she wants to become a scout in the OHL. And I've talked to quite a few females and actually males as well, but to help them get into the industry. I mean, I started from the bottom, and I'll always remember where I started. So my doors are always open to help someone break into the industry or help mentor them so that they do have the opportunity. And hopefully Jolie can break into the OHL and be scouting alongside me one day.
There you go. Aisha, over to you.
Patrice, I really like what you said about like small changes, because I think that when you like take a step back and you see like all the problems there are, it's easy to get overwhelmed. And I think focusing on those little things that we can do is such a great way to address things. And for me, I talk about this a lot for whoever will listen, but creating inclusive environments to me is huge, especially for me in my position. Like the facility that a team operates in should never be a barrier to who gets to work there. And like I've been told in the past, like, oh yeah, our athletic training room isn't in a good spot, so we can't even consider you for this position. Like, what a stupid excuse. Like that should not be something that holds anybody back. So I think focusing on just little things that we can do to make sure that wherever it is that, you know, the facilities that we're building, that there's a place for everyone to be comfortable. Like even just making sure there are accessible bathrooms for everyone. Like that's really not that difficult and shouldn't be something that, you know, people need to beg for. So I talk about it a lot, but I think that there's a lot more awareness surrounding that as well now, that everyone needs to be comfortable in the environment that they work in.
I think that is a great place to end things. As much as I would love to keep this dialogue going, we are out of time. But thank you so much to Kiana Scott, Aisha Vishram, and Kirsten Welsh for their insight, their dialogue, adding to the conversation. Thank you so much for participating in this. I won't speak for anyone on the call right now, but I will say that you probably are going to hear from some of these women who are a part of this today. You've obviously, just in the question section, I know a bunch of people have asked questions I haven't been able to get to. I'm so sorry, but you'll probably be hearing from them, and I'm hoping that you'll be welcoming to those questions from the people participating in this today. Lots of thank yous in the chat box as well. Thank you, ladies, for your time. Really, really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Patrice.
Thank you.
And thank you, Kitchener Rangers. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone. We are going to take another 5-minute break to go to the bathroom or stretch or whatever, and then get into our final third period, which is our keynote interview with Christine Simpson of Sportsnet. So stick around, and we'll be back with that just before 5:30. So thank you, everyone, and we will we'll be right back. Working for the first time. Can you hear me now, everyone?
You're good.
Okay, thank you. All right. Without further ado, everyone, welcome back to the second annual Kitchener Rangers Hockey Club Women in Hockey Conference presented by Rogers. And what a way to finish, but interview the incredible, the amazingly talented Kirsten Simpson of Sportsnet. Christine, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, that's quite the buildup. I'm not sure if if I can come through. I just want to start by saying I've thoroughly enjoyed the first 2 periods of your hockey game today. The panel
Excellent.
fantastic, and some of your panelists I know well and some I've never met, so it's been great to see some familiar faces and hear some stories from some new faces that I look forward to meeting in the future.
Well, that is excellent, and so glad that you could participate in that, and very pleased to have you. I know everyone is very excited to hear from you, and I know we've got lots of questions to get to on my own, but again, anyone tuning in, if there are questions for Christine, we will dedicate a few minutes toward the end of this discussion for some questions from the crowd as well, so feel free to pass those along. Christine, I don't even know where to begin with you, because you have had such an extensive, incredible career, and you know, you're still rolling full steam ahead, and I feel so honored to be interviewing you and be on this side of the interview with you. I've obviously known you for a lot of years, but followed your career for a lot of years, and I wanted to share a quick tidbit that I didn't tell you about. However, about 14-ish years ago, I met you for the first time, and I was kind of an aspiring, media person. I had a job at a radio station in London where I was going to school, and I asked you, what advice would you give someone doing an interviewing? I was interviewing players, coaches, that kind of thing. And I don't know if you remember this, but the advice that you gave me was, don't always focus so much on your questions that you don't allow yourself to listen to the answer. And because sometimes your questions will come from the answer that is given to you rather than, okay, you've got your questions prepped and stuff. So always be prepared, but you said always listen. Don't just be focusing on the next question. So I've tried to apply that in my career. And I don't even know if you remember saying that to me, but it stuck with me. And it's something that I feel like I've told other people that have asked me, and I have given you credit, not to worry. But anyway, I appreciate that word of advice. And for anyone on this webinar who is interested in going into the media world, that is straight from Christine Simpson about 15 years ago. So thank you so much for that. And again, thank you for your time today.
Not at all. It's still advice I would give today too, because it is still so true. You may have an idea as an interviewer where your interview is going to go, but your interview subject might take it into a whole different direction. You just need to be ready for that. So still good advice, even though I've been given it for obviously a decade and a half. I like that.
I like it too. It's great. And again, very, very applicable. But that said, let's dive into, of course, the questions about you and your career. And I kind of want to start with the beginning of your career path, because your career path as, a broadcaster has been very unique. Definitely not the way that most broadcasters get into media traditionally. So you started as the marketing manager for the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. Fun fact for those that didn't know. Can you kind of provide a little bit of insight as to how your career went from there to, hosting on Hockey Night in Canada and Sportsnet and hosting your own show and all that sort of stuff? So take it away.
Absolutely. No, I feel like, first of all, there is no one single path that people take to whatever career they choose. Obviously, in the hockey world is what we're talking about, but there's not a straight line. Mine certainly wasn't. Working as a marketing manager at the Hall of Fame, and it was as the Hall of Fame was getting ready to open at Yonge and Front in June of '93. So we had media from all over the world coming to do stories on this, brand new Hockey Hall of Fame. And so just by virtue of my job, they would keep, oh, Chris, CBC's here with the camera, or Chris, TSN's here with the camera. Can you go talk to them? And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, give them a tour, tell them about the hall. I'm like, all right. So it just kind of became a part of my job, not really thinking that was going to be my job. But I was very comfortable because I was talking hockey. I was talking the Hockey Hall of Fame, which I was obviously up on, given that was my role. But because of that, I got very comfortable being interviewed. I got very comfortable in front of a camera, on the other side, but still in front of a camera. And I started getting other opportunities because people had seen me be interviewed, or I would travel with the Stanley Cup. And next thing I would be, being interviewed on Canada AM with the Cup, talking about what's it like to travel with the Stanley Cup. So kind of at the same time, and probably in part because of that, the Maple Leafs hired me in 1995 as their first in-arena host. You know a little bit about those jobs. So I was the first in-arena host for the Leafs back at Maple Leaf Gardens. So for 3 years, I would work at the Hall of Fame all day, take the subway up to college on game nights and be in-arena host. Again, just becoming comfortable then with a microphone in front of an audience of 18,000 people. So when people say, is that what you always wanted to do, be a hockey broadcaster? The answer is no. But within the job as a marketing manager of the Hall of Fame, I kept getting these other opportunities, which eventually led me in my path to being a reporter for Sportsnet.
Wow. That, again, incredible story, and incredible to kind of see how things can progress and how opportunities can arise just from, putting yourself out there and being in positions where, people can see you and you're being seen. Now, I also know you grew up with two brothers in the game of hockey. And I know you mentioned that broadcasting wasn't always necessarily the dream, but did you know that you always wanted to work in hockey?
It's funny because I loved hockey, and as the middle sister between two hockey playing brothers, I was dragged to arenas my whole life as a kid. It's just what our family did. And because of that, I mean, I loved hockey. I knew the game of hockey. Again, ironically, just given when I was growing up, honestly, little girls didn't play hockey. So that wasn't, which has changed so much now. But no, I never really thought that there would be a job for me in hockey, certainly not in broadcasting. And you've heard a common theme with the other panels too. I was watching Hockey Night in Canada every Saturday night with my family, but not seeing any women as part of the broadcast. It never even dawned on me that that would be a part of it. So I went to Western, and actually even though the job at the marketing manager of the Hall was sort of where my hockey career began, I mean, I had worked I'd worked in the fashion industry. I worked on the Olympic bid. Like marketing and PR was where my professional life was lying. And then the hockey side was just a personal interest. So I felt very lucky when the two came together with my job at the Hall of Fame. And as we've just discussed, eventually into sports broadcasting. But I didn't think that there were many jobs within the world of hockey and I wasn't thinking, well, me as a woman, I can't do it. It's like,
right.
No, I didn't see opportunities that looked like me, within the hockey world. And now what I love about so many young girls and women who are looking at the game of hockey right now, they just see endless opportunities. And your previous 6 panelists are fantastic examples of all the opportunities that there are within hockey now.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's kind of a nice segue into my next question, which, yes, there's lots of opportunities for women and men, but lots of opportunities for women. But what do you feel is the largest challenge for women in hockey today? Because we've talked a lot about challenges and lots of things that have been overcome, but there are still lots of challenges out there. And what do you feel like is the largest challenge?
Well, I might say too, and sometimes the first one I'm going to mention, we can be our own worst enemies. We can feel like, oh, I don't really deserve it, or we can all, and I'm the same. We can talk ourselves out of something, an opportunity that we actually might be very well qualified for. So that is, one of my first messages is, if you feel that you can do it, do the work to be able to be qualified for the opportunity that's there, but then believe in yourself. And that sometimes is the hardest thing for women to do, is to believe in themselves and to, not let other people's expectations get in the way of that. But now, what was I going to say? I had a second point. For women, I think when you talk about assumptions,
right.
And it's fascinating, your previous panel, when I think it was Kiana was talking about, well, I don't look like a scout. She's right. She doesn't.
Yeah, of course. We've all seen scouts before.
Right? You don't look like an official. How, you wear stripes. Like, I just feel the assumption will be for a guy that, oh, well, they're up for that job, they must know hockey or they've played hockey. Whereas in some cases, the assumption for the woman would be, well, who did she know to get that job? Or, so it's kind of, it's breaking, obviously, it's breaking barriers. It's breaking assumptions of what stereotypically have been seen as male jobs. And then the assumption being, oh, well, the guy knows what he's talking about, so
Right.
the woman doesn't. So if a woman on a broadcast mispronounces the last name of a player, she doesn't know what she's talking about. If a man mispronounces the last name of a player, it's like, oh, he's just having a bad day. So it's others' assumptions of you that can get in the way, but it's also your belief in yourself. So it's a two-way street, I think, in following your passion.
Okay, excellent. I like that. I want to dive a bit back into your career because I know a lot of people on this webinar are interested in your career and sort of your trajectory. You've been with Sportsnet since '98, so that's a long time. You've profiled a lot of NHL players, personalities. You have your own show. You've been rinkside. What are some key learnings or key pillars that you've learned along the way that have really helped your career and helped kind of take you to that next level?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is just be a sponge, like learn from anybody that you can that you're working with. And so, for me, I've been so fortunate to be able to work with some of the giants in the business, and whether that's producers who can help me, develop my style, or other, Scott Oak has been doing rinkside reporting for so many years, and watching him and watching his style. Watching the likes of a Bob Cole, or even with the networks that I've worked in the States, being able to work with the likes of Mike Emmerich and Eddie Olczyk. So learn from everybody that is around you, but also just learn from what else you can watch. So for me, obviously, it would be watching other hockey broadcasts, but at the same time, because I know, okay, I want to be an interviewer, so I'm going to watch every kind of interview show there is, whether it's watching 60 Minutes, whether it's watching the NFL pregame shows, just to see even the style or the way that they might set up interviews. You have your own personal style, and so you always do need to always be within yourself and do it the way that you do. But to me, you will often get tips or just ways of, from production, let alone from interview style, that you can pick up from other people interviewing, because an interview is an interview, whether you're interviewing a political leader, a movie actor, or a hockey player. You can learn from all of the others in the industry who do it. And I see that you're back now.
Yes. I'm so sorry. I feel like technical difficulties have been plentiful today.
Well, we're all used to that after the last 2 years of us working from Zoom from home. So it's to be understood. So anyway, I know you probably didn't hear it all, but I hope that I answered that question.
I am certain that you did, and I apologize. I am at the Kitchener office, so I thought it would be perhaps more steady than at home, but we have had a couple of issues. So my apologies. But I'm sure everyone heard a fantastic answer to that question. And apologies if there was some overlap with your answer in my next question. But within your broadcast career, you've had a lot of experience in Canada, of course, but also in the United States with ESPN and ABC and Versus. So I wanted to kind of speak to perhaps some of the differences that you've noticed, or even similarities that you've noticed with working not only in Canada, but also within the States, and what are those differences and similarities across the border?
Yeah. So I would just say first, hockey's hockey wherever it is. But yes, there definitely are differences, and not only between necessarily the audiences in Canada versus the US, but also if you're working a game and it's a regional broadcast versus a national broadcast. Right. Because you do have to be thinking, if this is a regional Leafs game, and like the Leafs are playing the Boston Bruins, and you're coming up with story ideas that you'll tell within that broadcast, that probably 90% of your audience wants to hear about the Leafs. So you can trickle in a few Boston
stories, a little, yeah.
But for the most part that is your audience. I would say though, from having worked, ABC and ESPN back the first go round when they had the rights, and then Versus, who were the cable US rights holder in I guess it would be the mid 2000s. And I'm going to make a generalization, but in Canada, you assume a level of understanding and knowledge of hockey. In the States, and it also would depend on which team, like if it was a market like a Boston or the New York Rangers or the Chicago Blackhawks, a traditional hockey market where you do assume your audience kind of knows everything about hockey, but some of the other markets, and back in, the day when we were doing like a Carolina Hurricanes game, you can't assume, like you can't be too inside baseball because sometimes your audience wouldn't necessarily. So sometimes I would come up with sort of broader stories that might, just be what you're hoping to do is to make fans out of the casual people that might be watching. Do a sort of a story on some sort of historical reference to the game or to the Stanley Cup or something like that. I think hopefully it's changing, obviously, and now with ESPN and now TNT being the broadcast partners in the States. And I do very much feel the game of hockey has grown and will continue to grow in the US. So there maybe isn't as much of a disparity. But yeah, you just always have to be thinking, who's your audience and what are they looking for, and try and sort of mold your stories to that, but also take the opportunity with the platform that you have to try and educate them on something that you feel that they may not know, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great takeaway for whether you're working in, again, local media or in international media. Definitely some great takeaways there. Now, as the host of The Big Picture, you've had to ask a lot of tough questions. And I guess what advice would you give aspiring broadcasters in order to approach tough questions and make their interviewee, I suppose, feel safe and provide, that big picture answer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny when you talk about potentially difficult interviews. From last season, I would say that the two that I guess you would say would have the most potential for being explosive were one I did with John Tortorella and one I did with Mike Babcock. So with Tortorella, hey, if you know anything about Torts, he has the capability to fly off the handle and to say whatever is on his mind. And if you ask him something that he doesn't like, he will have no problem telling you. With Mike Babcock, it was really the first time I'd had a chance to talk to him since being let go from the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we all know the stories that had come out after that about him, having bullying tendencies with his. So, you're asking them perhaps questions that they won't like. But to me, all I ever think of is I'm not looking to get you. I am not into gotcha journalism. I want to give them an opportunity to give their side of it. Yeah. So to me, you get your facts straight. So if I can put to them, well, this player said this, one of your former players, and if I can actually read off a quote and see it and say, this is what he said. I'm just wondering if you can give us your understanding of what that would be. So it's not being confrontational. It's not being, I want you to fly off the handle. If you do fly off the handle, well, sometimes that makes for great TV. But that is never my purpose. My purpose is always to hopefully create an environment where my interview subject, whoever it is comfortable. And so you want them to forget that there are cameras there and just thinking that you're having a conversation. And it's just that maybe a million people are on the conversation, but in that moment, I am just looking for them to explain themselves and literally giving them the opportunity to do that. So, but those sometimes the ones that you might be a little nervous about where it's going to go can often end up being the most fulfilling ones when you feel like you actually were able to, learn something about what they are going through instead of just what you hear about somebody.
Absolutely. That makes, I think, a lot of sense. Now, just kind of a point B to that question. Obviously, you have a very extensive career in broadcasting. What advice would you give to sort of the newbie, the new kid on the block, as far as making sure that they've got their facts straight? Okay, great. But how do they create that comfort level, given that they are an unknown to, the person that they're interviewing?
Yeah. And that's a more difficult one to really answer. I mean, I guess even when I started in broadcasting, I was a newbie, but I had already worked within hockey, in these other capacities through the Hall of Fame, through the Maple Leafs, or in some cases I was interviewing players who had been teammates of my brothers at the time. So there is that. But I mean, I think as long as you show that you've done your homework and you know what you're talking about and you're doing it in a professional way. Right. I mean, you have to be your authentic self too. I do find it interesting when some people have an idea of what a television personality is and put on a voice and put on a look and put on and I just feel people can see through that, not only viewers at home, but I think players too. Right. If you don't know what you're talking about, or if you are trying to be something that you're not, in my opinion, fake, just sort of, you can see
identify it. Yeah.
That you're not being authentic. So, and everyone has to bring, because I can't tell people to be a certain way, but they have to be authentically them, true within themselves, but also feel like they know they've done the homework. So they're comfortable sitting down and doing the interview, and they're respectful of the person who's giving the time in order to be interviewed. So I guess that's probably the best way I could describe it.
I appreciate that. I am going to divert just to a question that popped up on the screen in our Q&A chat. I do have a couple questions of my own for you, but Allie Penders has asked, she's, I guess, covering the Heritage Classic on Sunday. Congrats, Allie. Do you have any advice on fighting that feeling of imposter syndrome? And I feel like that's a good kind of segue into that idea. I know women in general, everyone I think suffers from imposter syndrome to a certain extent, but I think women especially do. So is there any advice that you can give Allie as she goes into this upcoming weekend and fighting that imposter syndrome?
Well, and first of all, congrats to be doing that. I know it's going to be an amazing, one of my highlights was doing the first Heritage Classic, which was in Edmonton back in 2003. So I just know the excitement of what those, grand events on the biggest stage can be. I guess it would be this. I mean, and trust me, like to this day, there are days where I still feel imposter syndrome. It's like, what am I doing here? Like I've fooled them this far and nobody's figured it out. So I've somehow managed it. It is just something I think many of us always live with. But for me, I think what that meant, and some of my colleagues would kid me about it, I just worked so hard. Like I prepared for everything. And for me too, I'm one that, and I'm sure it's very old school, I write notes. Like when I'm prepping for a game or an interview, I have to write out everything. And not because then I'm reading from those notes on the day, but by doing that, it's in my mind. So I know it's in there somewhere. So I'll, prepare, I'll find out every bit of information I can about that person. I'll talk to other people who know that person. I will try and plan for every possible scenario, but also keep in mind, and this should be the case no matter where you work. I know my colleagues are never going to let me hang out to dry, right? I know that I've got a producer in a truck who wants me to have as much success as I want him or her to have success, because we work together as a team, whether you're a hockey team on the ice or a production team putting a broadcast together. You have your colleagues and they're all there to help you. If not, you're not in the right place. I'm lucky enough to have colleagues that are all, and so maybe it is just that little pep talk you can give someone else and they can give you. And that feeling alone of knowing we're all here because we deserve to be here to do this role. Like remind yourself, you wouldn't be in that situation if you didn't deserve to be there. So whatever it was that got you the opportunity to be covering the Heritage Classic in Hamilton on Sunday, remind yourself that's why you're there. As much as it's easy to sometimes have those seeds of doubt, don't let those seeds of doubt take over your mind.
I think that's a great answer. I do want to ask one more question from my own notes, and then I will. I know we've only got a few more minutes before we have to wrap this up. I feel like, again, we could chat for hours about this. But given that this is a Women in Hockey conference, International Women's Day is tomorrow. Of course, we're celebrating that. But one question I want to ask is, women are often referred to as kind of the other within the sport of hockey. It's a female hockey player, a female journalist, a female broadcaster, a female linesman. how do you think we as women can combat that otherness, so to speak? And what challenges do you feel we face that maybe our male counterparts don't?
Yeah.
I know it's a big question to unpack, but.
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying, because I feel like leading up to International Women's Day, there are often many men who go, well, when's our day? And the quick answer is, well, it's every other day of the year.
It's 4 days a year.
So, well, I do feel, yes, wouldn't it be great if I wasn't looked upon as a female hockey reporter, or, others as a female this or a female that. In many eyes, we still are, but then utilize the platform that we have, which is, why you're doing a conference like this, which is why I'm happy to be a part of this discussion, where hopefully we do come to the day where it isn't just a thing. It's normalized that there are female hockey reporters. I mean, I look at a story I did on Saturday night, Jim Rutherford, and how he's revamping the Vancouver Canucks, and how Emily Castonguay and Cami Granado are assistant GMs of the Vancouver Canucks. They are incredibly qualified to be assistant GMs, but there is part of like, oh, you had to do a story on them because they're women. Well, no, we did the story because they're qualified to do the job. I found it fascinating that Jim Rutherford, who's one of the best people I know in the game of hockey, but a guy who's been in the league for decades, that he's the one making these very progressive moves. So I applaud him, first of all, for that. But for them, yes, they look forward to the day that they're just assistant GMs of the Vancouver Canucks, and the fact that they're women, we don't need to talk about. But the fact remains, right now, we do need to talk about it. And we do need to give them the platform to talk about what it means to them. But also, it's helping to normalize it so that the next time someone's hired, it's a little headline, but it's not the biggest part about why they were hired to do the job. And both Cami and Emily both said that when Jim Rutherford approached them about these jobs, the fact that he was authentically like, this is why I want you to be a part of my team. Both of them said, if I felt in any way that for him it was, oh, I'm going to check that box, we can say that we've got diversity now, and we're really inclusive. And they were like, there's not a chance. That wasn't the reason behind it. It's authentically, they were the best people for that job. So the day will come when we don't have to look at it as female this or male that. I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're getting there. And even by conferences like this, it's a big step towards getting there.
Absolutely. And my final question, and then I will see if there's any last questions from the audience, just kind of on that note about the role that men play in advocating for women. Of course, we are advocating on our own behalf, and we are standing together, and it's important for us to support one another as females in this industry. But can you speak to it and maybe just expand on the role that men really play in advocating on women's behalf, and how they can be allies for us?
Absolutely. And and as I said, Jim Rutherford is the greatest example of being a really important ally for the women within the Vancouver Canucks organization. The truth is, and the fact remains, certainly at my network and most hockey teams and leagues, the people in the positions of power are men. The people making the decisions as to who gets hired and the trajectory of that team or that organization are men. Again, that is changing. And I always love when I see a panel with Kim Davis on it, because she has become such a mentor for me as, a woman in such a senior role at the National Hockey League, because there haven't been a whole lot of them over the years in the 30 years I've been around hockey. So, to really make change, I do feel it is important to have more women like Kim Davis at the helm. Tied to Minia as the head of a hockey league, that will change things. But for now, if the majority of the decision makers are men, it is so wonderful when we can find men who can be our allies. And for me, it's people like Ron McLean. I mean, I can say that, geez, it'd be nice to have, a few women on our panels on Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, but I'm not sure that my idea is going to carry as much weight as when a Ron McLean says, we have to. Or Jeff Merrick had me on his radio show today talking about the feature we had on Saturday about what the Vancouver Canucks are doing. I talked about this conference, you know, those men, hey, we're all in this together. And so for me, I've got, you know, my sisterhood of people like Tara Sloan and Jen Botterill and Carolyn Cameron, who are doing everything we can to, you know, make women more, give them a higher profile and be more involved in hockey broadcasting from our end. But we'll forever be grateful to the men who are doing the same, who have a lot of the power, who can make those things happen.
Incredible. I think, honestly, I think that's a wrap. That was incredible. Christine, thank you so much. Again, we flew through 30 minutes of conversation, which is not a surprise to me at all. You have so much wealth of knowledge to pass along to all of our viewers today. So thank you so much on behalf of the Kitchener Rangers and everyone who has tuned in today. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Again, everyone who has tuned in today, thank you for your time. Thank you for your commitment to, you know, celebrating women in hockey, but also contributing to that dialogue and helping with fighting that fight on behalf of women in terms of overcoming challenges, breaking down barriers, and creating, you know, a more equal and diverse space within the hockey community for women. Again, Christine, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Rogers, our presenting partner for this event, and looking forward already to the third annual next year. Hopefully we can all be in person next year, and again, have a wonderful International Women's Day tomorrow, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.